If your spawn keeps getting contaminated, there's a very likely possibility that contamination is happening well before inoculation, inside the pressure cooker. And the worst part is, you can still do everything else perfectly and still lose every jar if you get this part wrong. To make matters worse, these mistakes don't show up immediately. They show up weeks later, so most people end up blaming their still air box, their cultures, or their technique. But the reality is, it probably happened right here. So today, I'm showing the most important steps involved in sterilizing with a pressure cooker. The stuff I wish I knew as a beginner. Let's not waste any more time and jump right into the first thing that beginners get wrong. First and foremost is the setup. See, I have my spawn jars already here and they're ready for sterilization. The first step beginners tend to get wrong is not elevating their jars off of the bottom of the pressure cooker. You see, the way the pressure cooker works is we fill it with water. As that water heats, it produces steam. We trap that steam inside and it builds up pressure, thus creating this hot, pressure-driven environment for everything to get sterilized. So with water being the base of everything involved here, it's important that we have enough in our pressure cooker. Check your individual manufacturer's instructions for how much water you should have in your pressure cooker. Now in the case of my 22-quart pressure cooker back here, I normally add about 3 quarts of water, which requires about 2 to 3 inches of space in the bottom. Now for that amount of water, even with the included rack, my jars are still gonna be sitting in a good amount of water. With our jars sitting inside the water, they're gonna boil and cook so much more than they ever should. This leads to mushy grain jars that are difficult to work with at best and contamination magnets at worst. Fortunately, the solution here is pretty simple. I ball up a few pieces of aluminum foil, throw them under the trivet, that's this thing, and that elevates the jars enough to keep them out of the water. A super simple, cheap solution to a very real problem. And just like all aspects of mushroom growing, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect 2-inch diameter ball or anything. Just crumple up some balls of foil and throw them under your rack so your jars don't sit inside water. It's that simple. Now with our jars safely elevated out of the water, we can put the lid on and turn on our heat. And this is where the next big mistake occurs. All too often, people skip this crucial step. They turn the heat on with the vent already closed. The hope is that we can start building pressure, get these things sterilized, and speed the process up. We need to first push all that cool air out and replace the entire empty space with steam. So to accomplish that, we fire up the heat on our stovetop with the valve of our pressure cooker completely open. This part is known as the steam purge. After some time, the water's gonna heat up and it will start producing steam, and you'll notice a little bit of steam coming out of the top of your pressure cooker. This is a good sign. Now we need a steady, uninterrupted stream of steam before we close the valve and start building pressure. And this, unfortunately, is what a lot of beginners try to rush through. You'll notice at first, the steam comes out in bursts. It's basically steam with pockets of air escaping. You'll be able to see it or hear it, and it will definitely look inconsistent. It looks like a little sputtering or steam interrupted temporarily and then more steam. The more you do this, the more you'll be able to recognize those pockets of air escaping. This part may be a little bit boring. It may feel a little bit drawn out. I know you're excited to get things sterilized, but it's important. We need to wait until we have 10 minutes, 10 whole minutes of uninterrupted steam. Not 10 minutes of air pockets escaping mixed with steam. We need all those air pockets to escape and then just 10 minutes of steady steam. Only at that point can we close the valve and start building up pressure. Just remember, the couple extra minutes of patience here is gonna save you weeks of frustration down the road. So after our 10 minutes of steady steam, we close the pressure valve and let pressure start building, which leads us perfectly into the third mistake I see beginners making. Misunderstanding time at pressure. So I'm here to sterilize my jars for 90 minutes at 15 psi. Your jars might be different. You might be sterilizing bags, or you might be sterilizing liquid culture. They all have different time requirements, but they all follow the same rules. So oftentimes when the valve closes and pressure starts building, people begin their sterilization timer. Once again, trying to speed things up or rush the process, and that's what leads to frustration down the road. We only start our timer once we reach pressure. So when we close the valve, we'll watch pressure build, and it will likely take several minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15. Only once we're at our 15 PSI do we then start our timer. Once at 15 PSI, I'll reduce the heat a little bit because I no longer need such high heat to keep building the pressure. Now I just need enough heat to maintain that pressure. This is where beginners tend to under-sterilize their jars. They start the timer right when they close the pressure valve, not when they actually get up to pressure. And if it takes 15 or 20 minutes to build up to that pressure, you're losing 15 to 20 minutes of potential sterilization time, which could be the difference between a clean spawn jar and a contaminated one. You might get away with it sometimes, but eventually you won't, and it's going to be really frustrating. Before we move on to the next step, let me just save you a little bit of stress here. You don't need a specific brand of pressure cooker. You don't need a super precise amount of water in the pressure cooker. You don't need any fancy racks or accessories, and you don't need to micromanage your PSI every minute. If you get the setup, the steam purge, and the time at pressure all right, the rest is just noise. At this point, we're on the home stretch to some healthy sterilized jars and just have one more major hurdle to overcome. This is perhaps the most common mishap and one that I even see advanced growers tend to mess up. So with our timer up and our jars sterilized, you're probably excited to pull those things out, let them cool down so we can get them inoculated and grow a bunch of mushrooms. And I am too, but we don't want to do that just yet. It's extremely important that we allow our pressure cooker to cool naturally here. Don't open up the vent. Don't try to take off the lid. Just turn off the heat and let the pressure cooker sit right where it is. The pressure cooker is probably going to take several hours to cool, and for best practice, I just like to let mine cool overnight. The problem with opening that pressure cooker too soon and pulling jars out while they're still hot is that they create a vacuum. And that vacuum can cause something called suckback contamination. With your hot jar pulled into a cool air environment, the steam inside contracts and it pulls cool air in, possibly faster and more aggressively than your filter can safely control. With all that air rushing in, contaminants can enter the filter and ruin your jars before you ever even get the chance to ruin them yourself. Just go ahead and let those jars cool naturally inside the pressure cooker, and I promise you'll be rewarded for your patience. Mushroom growing is a game of patience, and the pressure cooker is that first place where your patience is really likely to be tested. Slow down here and everything else in your mushroom growing journey will be so much easier. And that's all there really is to it. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and happy growing.